at Riviera. For those of you that don't know Riviera, we're a specialist firm. We do about 550 searches a year across the US and Europe, and it's entirely focused on product engineering and data science. Leadership roles. Over the past 20 years, we've been lucky enough to help accompany some fairly iconic brands, from Uber to DoorDash to Databricks to Snowflake to Datadog and others, build consequential businesses in those three functional areas. And I spent my career, first 15 years of it in Europe, and working with some what were leading boutique search firms there, then came over to the US, partly because we were going on a scaling journey, moving from venture into private equity and into public markets. And when the European market seeks leaders in those areas, typically they're picking people from the US. Luckily, now the European market has become mature enough that you don't need to do that all the time, but you still need to do that some of the time. But that brought me and my family over to San Francisco 5 years ago, and then into Riviera, because I wanted to get right to the center of the community within venture and now in private equity and public markets. The focus that I have here, because we're all doing similar things, is the intersection of more scaled businesses where there is a focus on product and there is an intersection with AI. And that can either be businesses that are building models, businesses that are building core applications driven by them, or companies that are trying to understand, because they're technology driven, how they can adopt AI to be able to improve productivity or increase revenue. That's my background. Pleased to meet you all.
Thank you, Sam. Over to Heidi.
Well, good morning, and what a pleasure to be with you this morning and to see so many familiar faces on a Monday as we dive into a really big topic. And there are no easy answers to the things that we're going to dialogue today, but let me give you a bit of a background about me and what we do as a firm. I work for a firm called Martyn, Bassett Associates, and I've been with this firm for 25 years. 7 years ago, we also stood up a dedicated practice around product, and that practice covers product management, product design, and product marketing. Most of our we're also based in Toronto, Canada, and most of our work is done across North America. 80% of our clients are B2B SaaS companies. 85% are true startups, venture-backed, VC-backed, or even in some cases, angel invested, seed funded. And oftentimes when we're engaged in a search for a product leader, whether it be a CPO or a vice president of product, it is that wild and crazy world of the first person who's going to take the baton from a founder, often a very technical founder. And what they often desire is world-class product craft, as well as that person who's going to build the business with them. So that is a lot of what we do out of Toronto across North America.
That's awesome. Thank you, all three of you, so much for taking your time and being here today. Can't wait to dig deeper in. So let's kick off the panel discussion. And all of you, please feel free to utilize the chat. We have volunteers here to moderate your questions and make sure those are being answered by our panelists. But let's start this panel discussion with the most obvious question, which is, what are the trends? Is the market getting any better or not? And, as a data-driven PM, I was actually looking for some data on specifically product leadership, everything from the layoffs to the hiring trends of both supply and demand of the marketplace, if you may. And aside from what I saw on LinkedIn, which is quite of an impressive number on 3,000 open roles for director of product and above, and this is just in the United States, there wasn't any data to actually anchor on. So would love to hear from you all. What are you seeing what are these missing pieces in the market? What are you seeing in terms of hiring trends? Is it getting better? Is it not? What are some key insights that would help us as an audience? Mark, why don't you get us started, followed by Heidi and then Sam. Mark, if you have anything to present, we have a bit of a technical thing where we'll have to make you the co-host of the meeting. And then after that, you'll have to pass it on to Heidi, which is, we'll walk you through it. So Mahip, if you could please make Mark the host. Mark, is it?
So I have data, but I actually don't have anything that's like presentable.
No
So
worries.
if I can just start, I think that
Please
would be
do, please
fine.
do.
Perfect. So from our data right now, we currently at True, we have about 70 active product roles that are open across the board. These span from everything from venture to PE to public. I would say in terms of overall trends, a couple of themes that we have been seeing from our perspective. Number one, there was a wave of CFO and CEO replacements that happened over the last 18 to 24 months. Shortly on the heels of those transitions being made at the management team level, there was a major wave of CPO searches. And right now we're seeing that pendulum start to shift now that those CPOs are in the seat, that those firms are coming back to us for CTO searches on the heels of those placements. That said, many of these companies are still in that transition period where they're looking to still bring on product leaders, and that is reflective in the active searches that we're working on right now. In terms of some other trends, I think Heidi mentioned this a little bit, which is this trend of a CPTO. And we are seeing two flavors of these CPTO searches. One is someone that is much more commercially and business oriented, that has had experience managing an engineering budget, but they'll generally be paired with a strong senior director or VP of engineering to keep the trains running on time. The other is a more technical product leader that can come in and actually own and truly own both product and engineering. That's a trend that we're seeing most often with companies that are around 100 to 150 million in ARR. They are suffering from increased churn. They are suffering from slower growth. Generally, growth has gone from 40 to 60% year over year to sub 20% year over year. And they have just gone through a cycle of optimizing for cash flow positivity or profitability. And now they're looking to bring in someone that can partner with the CEO or founder and quickly come up with net new products that can hopefully rejuvenate growth for that business. The last trend that I think we're seeing is that everyone is thinking about how can we bring on a product leader that has the wisdom and the insights to think about how we're going to implement generative AI into our product roadmap and into our product strategy. That one is a bit of a tougher challenge in that there just simply aren't that many folks that have had successful experiences commercializing products with a generative AI component to them. And the industry as a whole, right? I'm sure you guys have all read the papers around the transformer models. Those came out in 2017. And oftentimes we have to advise these larger companies, hey, you're not going to be able to find somebody with 10 to 15 years of generative AI experience because that just simply does not exist in the market. From an asset class perspective, I think you're seeing a lot of activity on the venture side, seed through Series B. That's garnering quite a lot of fundraising over the last couple of quarters. And then there continues to be a ton of activity within private equity as many sub-verticals go through a period of consolidation. And then the challenge that exists within private equity right now, as I'm sure you guys have all been reading about, is a lot of firms are sitting on assets that need to find an exit, and timelines are getting elongated. You're seeing recapitalizations more and more often versus an outright exit. And that's an ongoing challenge that we anticipate these PE firms will be facing for the next 1 to 3 years. Within public markets, the trends that we're noticing are a lot of companies are going through that motion of we need to bring in a product leader that can help us build out net new business lines that can create incremental 50 to 100 million ARR revenue. And then increasingly, there's an opportunity within some of these public companies that are between 5 and 15 billion in market cap, where there's an actual opportunity because of how the street has treated their stock, where I think for the right executives, ideally, we're seeing a lot of folks that have joined these highly valued venture-backed startups where their options are underwater, taking a bet and joining publicly traded companies where there will be better liquidity and then also meaningful potential upside in the stock. So I'll pause there and I'll pass it over to you, Heidi.
Fantastic. And if we can do the host enablement, because I'm going to share a deck that will help us to rest our thoughts on some of the things that I'm going to share from a startup, from a founder-led business perspective. And
You can try and share your screen. Let's see if
it
it
is
works.
still disabled, so I'm not sure.
Okay, try now.
Okay. Oh, perfect. There we go. Fantastic. Can everybody see that? Can I just get a thumbs up here? There we go. So I'm going to be sharing from the lens of the business that we do, from the narrative of a venture-backed, founder-led business. And I spend a lot of my time talking with product leaders, CPO, all levels, who when I speak with them, they're so curious to understand what's happening, because trying to sometimes capture the attention of a recruiter can be challenging. And when they do, they're shocked and disappointed that in some cases there isn't alignment to the projects that they're working on. And so I'm hoping that some of this narrative that I'm now going to share will help unlock some of those reasons why. And they all have threads that lead into things that we can be doing as product leaders to try to unlock opportunities as part of your career search. I'll begin with the fact that in executive search, we're experiencing longer than typical sales cycles for our business. So if we think back to 2021, not that I'm suggesting that 2021 was any indicator of a normal, market. That was certainly, a once in a generation boom, given what was happening. But, in those cycles, we could see engagement, a retained search being signed off and closed, typically anywhere within a week to a month. And of course, there were outliers to that, sometimes within 24 to 48 hours, but typically within that 1 week to a month, they've made a decision and they're executing on a search and we're ready to go. To compare that to today, which is also not necessarily indicative of any normal stage of market, it's taking longer. This should come as absolutely no surprise. Anywhere from 4 weeks to 4 months, with certainly some outliers. We have one search that we just launched. It took 6 months for that organization to be at the point that they were ready to execute on that product leadership hire. And there's plenty of no-go situations. We could spend time with a founder or a CEO only to discover that it ends up not advancing forward. Why is that? Well, the three most common reasons are, because we work with venture-backed companies, is that, they're expecting, they're hoping, they're working to get funding, but they didn't get it. And so there's a whole challenge that they are dealing with. The other piece is, okay, so they're going to execute on the search, but they're trying to do it fiscally conservative. They're trying to do it, I'm going to just say it, the cheapest way possible. Someone's referred us to somebody. Oh, our personal network have introduced us to a few people. Trying to draw or attract and make a simple decision from an immediate pool of candidates. There's a lot to be said about that, and we can talk about how that could benefit you as a product leader. But then the tragic piece is really indecision. Not yet. I heard someone say just this morning that, Falkland's Law is everywhere. If you don't have to make a decision, then don't. And that's, a really challenging time. So simply indecision. These companies are not ready to do it yet. Now, the piece that's really interesting is that when a search is green-lighted, we're seeing that it's moving faster than it has ever moved before. In fact, the number one question that we get asked is, so how long is this going to take? And they're already dreaming about the day that the person's going to be in the seat adding value to their business. Now, tell me if you can see this, but I just want to give you some numbers of what that meant to to the last CPO search that we just completed. So here's some numbers that, when I think about, are very telling for the time that we are in. So if we think about, day one of a search, I'm looking at a line of sight. I was looking at a line of sight of approximately 191 potential product leaders who were within the requirements and the framework, had from a distance at a high level, the kind of experience that the client had engaged us to find for them. I actually only had to engage with 43 individuals. The first round of candidates we presented was 5 first round candidates. And once the client began interviewing, so now they're starting that cycle, they're meeting with product leaders, and they're seeing what does reality actually look like for the person who we've described. At that point, we, over the course of the remaining time of the search, presented an additional 7 individuals. But notice that the client only interviewed 6. And the hire was in the first round of 5. That person was the one who, when they left with, it was interesting, the feedback, this is a very data-driven business, very data-driven CEO. What was the language that they attached to that person? We loved them. So it's interesting when we hear that kind of feedback, because it reminds us all that people hire people. And this is a people business. And so if we think about this example of the numbers, I want it to be an encouragement to you. Anyone who's in this room today who's feeling discouraged, that while there may be a large number of applicants, or that it's, that the needle just doesn't feel to be moving for you personally, when someone captures the attention of a CEO and a stakeholder and there's alignment, that CEO is likely to not necessarily continue engaging with the largest pool in the market who may be available. They want to make a decision. They want to get to a hiring outcome as quickly as possible. Interesting thing about location. So this is becoming a big topic of conversation again. More employers than not are looking for a leader who is going to make it work with an in-office X number of days per week, or have a plan how they're going to be there regularly. What does that look like? Well, it's different company to company. But I would say that I think 70% of our clients today are hoping for a stakeholder be in office 3 days a week. 1 year ago, it wouldn't have been that. I mean, this is really sort of coming back to good old-fashioned leaders in, line of sight in offices around a table whiteboarding. So I find that very interesting. I've chosen to call the myth of so much competition a myth because sometimes we're all using this language. Oh, there's so many people in the market. There's so much available talent. There's so much competition. Not necessarily if you really break it down. Most leaders want domain expertise. That is the number one requirement we have. And so if you slice and dice the available pool of candidates, everyone who is possibly a product leader, a CPO, when you slice it and dice it, those groups get really small very quickly. Adding to that, someone who's actually interested, adding to that, someone who's actually available, adding to that, someone who's ready to make a move because they've satisfied the reason why they were hired. So we have to sort of not be so concerned about the larger pool of talent in the market. Don't focus on everybody else. Focus on you and your situation and whose attention you are trying to capture. And, if you can help a company win their category because you have domain expertise, that is definitely that needs to be part of your strategy. More and more leaders want a product leader who is capable of delivering value well beyond a title. These are tough times. And so, when Mark was talking about the CPTO, I had made You know, I had mused in January, I think there's going to be an increase in CPTO roles as companies look at cost cutting and trying to do more with less. Have we seen them? Absolutely. But guess what? At the end of the day, what I've learned is that they're optimizing for one or the other, and most really want a product leader. So in cases where they've wanted more of a technology leader, it's because they had a really strong VP product and a bunch of first level product leaders, but most still optimize for product. In fact, the last CPTO we placed, guess what the title was on the offer? Chief Product Officer. Well, there you go. And people still hire people. This should be very good news for you. In fact, this is good news for all of us because this is a people-centric business. And you, as the product leader, looking for your next opportunity, you are looking for a CEO who's going to become captivated with you and who feels that you are the solution to their problem or can realize their opportunity. And the tragedy in all of this is when I meet with CPOs who are struggling, who are in the struggle, the pit. Maybe they've been out of work for 6 months, 8 months, 1 year. And I've met plenty of you who are in that situation. It's when you're applying 2021 tactics to your job search when it's 2024. And we can talk more about that later.
Wow, this is amazing. I feel like we can write just blog posts on what we just learned in terms of trends and insights. So thank you so much. Sam, over to you. Please, round off those insights from you.
Yeah, sure. I'm conscious of time, and I know there's 3 questions that we need to get through. There's a lot of what's been shared already that I'd just be repeating. So I agree with a lot of what Heidi and Mark have said. I think maybe just to zoom out for 2 minutes and just give some context of why these trends are the case. Over the last 10 years, we've seen the number of public companies shrink from about 8,000 to 6,000. We've seen the number of companies that are backed by private equity bloat from about 1,300 to about 15,000. So that's why you're seeing an emergence of a much larger number of opportunities within PE. Why is that happening? For all the reasons that Heidi and Mark have talked about. The M&A markets are dead. There's 1,400 companies that are unicorns that raised at a time when they had multiples that they now can't grow into. And there's a lot of those businesses that are now ending up under PE ownership. And it just has become a more attractive financial model to be able to progress the business. So that's why you see the mix of opportunities you do. There's a lot more in early stage because, frankly, finding companies now and taking the time to be able to price their value and give them investment, and also for candidates to be able to come in at seed and Series A, knowing that the value of the business is the value because people have taken time to determine it in today's market and today's multiples. And there's a lot of dry powder. So, people still need to invest this money, and it's more likely they'll invest it at early stage than they will at late stage. And then in the public markets, you're seeing companies trying to harness emerging technology for productivity gain. The only people that we've seen really drive revenue from AI and specifically neural nets are the companies with huge engineering resources and massive amounts of data and amazing connectivity to the market. So basically Mag 7. Everyone else is trying to figure out where to get productivity increases, and there are some in the margins, but it hasn't given the returns that you would expect based upon the amount of money invested so far. But you're either an AI optimist or a pessimist. I'll leave you all to decide your own beliefs in that area. But maybe we should we move on to the next question, Sue?
Yes,
but just
let's move on to the next
give us
question.
the momentum.
Thank you, Sam. Yes. So now that we have an understanding and a richer understanding of the trends and insights, and there are a few moving parts in terms of what we're seeing, thanks to all of your experience, we want to move on to the next question, which is, what are you seeing in terms of successful candidate behaviors? Last session, we had a panel of VPs and CPOs who had successfully transitioned in the last 6 months. So we know it's happening. There are offers being made out there. Are you seeing any differently in the candidate behaviors now versus, say, 2-3 years ago? But basically, would love to hear your insights. What are you seeing? What are some successful candidate behaviors? What advice would you have for this audience here? Let's start with Sam.
So I don't think much has changed in terms of what denotes success. I think people who have shown over time that they've entered a business and they've understood the situation, they've formulated a strategy, they've built a team, and they've executed upon the strategy, and the business is in a materially different position to the one that they inherited. It's no more complicated than that. I think the market, when it was frothy back in 2021, tempted a lot of people out of journeys that they were on to go and do something that seemed even more spectacular. And some of those people went on to do spectacular things, and others got burnt in businesses that actually didn't have a business model where they had loads of capital. So I think everyone is suffering from perhaps making one or two mistakes in their career over the last 12, 24 months. And that's fine. And we're comfortable with that. So I think the important thing is knowing where your strengths lie and understanding who you are as a product leader. And I think there's so much amazing content out there now for you to be able to think about whether you are a product craftsperson, you like going in really early, you can operate at an altitude where you have very little information to make intuitive decisions alongside early stage founders, or you are an organization builder and you like to have the resources around you to be able to build an organization where you've already determined product market fit, or you're a transformational leader to the point of product and technology coming together. Typically that we see is in businesses that need to undertake some form of change in direction, or they need to go through some sort of productivity increase because revenues aren't where they hope they would be. And you're consolidating the two functions together to get execution speed up. So there's lots of different contexts to who you are as a leader. And I think what can happen in a market that's as constrained as this one is there's a temptation to present yourself as, I can do all of those things, because there are these individual moments in my career where I have done each of those things. What that does is creates a blur to a recruiter, because we don't know quite which thing you want to hang your hat on. So my advice would be the people that have been successful are the ones that understand who they are, and that's the thing that they pursue. And make that clear to the people that you're engaging with and go after those opportunities. And don't wait for us to call you, because the other thing that happened over the last couple of years is that all the venture funds overhired into their talent functions. The PE funds did the same. Public companies did the same. So everyone is trying to solve their own hiring needs, even at an executive level, in-house before they come to us. So if you know who you are and the types of opportunity you're going after, that gives you a target list of companies where you don't just rely on the headhunters, you actively go and contact the people that sit within the exec recruiting functions of those businesses. And you can do that with a coherent story because they represent the thing that you're looking for. And I think have sprints in a specific area. If it doesn't work out, maybe change that profile. I think there's always this concern that, oh, well, I've hung my hat on one thing. That means I couldn't go back and say it's something else. You can. We forget quickly. They forget quickly. So, A/B test, but start with the capabilities and the stage commensurate context that you think most suit you.
Thank you, Sam. Last session, we actually had this presentation of this advice that finding out your candidate market fit and being part of and being clear about it was actually an important tip that was presented. So I can see you resonating and addressing that. So thank you for that. Mark, let's move on to you and then Heidi.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Sam just shared in terms of, I don't know if things have changed too much, but I would say there is an emphasis right now by hiring managers and boards where they want to measure 10 to 15 times before they cut once. And a lot of that is coming through back channels, really diving deep into your track record and your experiences. And I think one major trend is this risk averseness is causing folks to be very hesitant on taking a bet on anyone that does not have a one-to-one directly relevant or directly transferable set of experiences. I would say back in the 2021, people were a lot more willing to take that type of risk. And I think I've seen that risk appetite just go down dramatically. I would also say it's very important for folks to be crystal clear around their narrative on their transitions. That is something that companies and hiring managers are really drilling into. And I think you need to have a good narrative and story on why you made the moves that you've made. And I think particularly folks that may have made not a great move, being thoughtful around how you talk about that, proactively going and getting references from your hiring manager or from a board member at that company that can help to corroborate your story is super helpful. And then I would say third, it's a little bit of back to the basics, right? That's really being crystal clear on your answers to the craft of product management, being crystal clear to your answers around how you lead and manage teams, having examples of folks that you were able to hire and develop and train. These are all nothing new, but I think it's important for us and for all of the folks here to just really work on those answers and make them sharp, make them precise, and then make them targeted to the specific company that you're talking to.
Awesome. And before Heidi, I just wanted to kind of like quickly call out, we will not have time for breakouts, but I think that's okay. We are going to have a great discussion and do Q&A. In another 5 minutes, we'll transition to Q&A. So just wanted to let everybody know. Heidi, over to you.
I mean, the basics have been covered. This, everything they said, I would just layer on to that. This is the time to apply first principles thinking. You are not looking for a job. You are looking for an opportunistic CEO who, after meeting you, says, you might be the solution to our problem and wants to continue engagement. So thinking about who you are and what you've done well and where your wins are, and then beginning to create that classic ABM marketing campaign. Who are the companies? Who are the competitors? Who are the ones bigger and earlier coming up next, for whom your experiences and your outcomes and what you have already done, the problems you have already solved for, who needs you? And then reaching out proactively to those hiring stakeholders, the person with the power who can unlock the decision to keep you meeting other people on their ELT in their group and unlock funding for a hire such as yourself. If we kind of think about it from that lens, in essence, that's what we're doing. We're trying to meet CEOs and founders to unlock, opportunities. So in essence, you're actually competing with us in a market like this. Who's going to get them first? Well, we've already figured out and do this full time. You're stepping into it, but this is what the market requires right now, because you may not get those opportunities through search firms because of all the reasons that we've already discussed. Going back to the basics, the good old-fashioned process of interviewing. It is very uncomfortable. It's unnatural for most people. Nobody actually really wants to be doing interviews. And being mindful of not only everything that's already been shared, but of this idea of recency bias. Okay. Do you care about the search that I worked on 25 years ago? No, you don't. You care about what are we working on right now and how that's relevant for you. And that's how CEOs and leaders think. How can you help us solve this problem, realize this opportunity? And so thinking about how can you connect the dots to what you know and understand from researching organizations who you're interested in, so that you can demonstrate and communicate how you could actually add value to their business. Business leadership is at the heart and core of product leadership roles. You're going to be the one, figure it out. How do we monetize this? How do we actually create a path to revenue? You're going to be the one to be thinking about go-to-market plans and how do we actually, win the category? That's on you. So applying that to your own personal process will only benefit you.
Awesome. Mark, Sam, did you want to add anything else? Okay, let's go to the third and final question, and then we'll open it up for audience Q&A. AI is obviously everywhere around us. Generative AI, as Mark mentioned, is the more recent trend that is poised to really transform industries. What are you seeing in terms of the impact of AI on what employers are looking for? Mark, you mentioned hey, actually having 10 years of generative AI experience is probably not a practical thing given the the lifetime of that industry in general. What are you seeing in trends? What are you seeing in terms of change in recruiter expectations, employer expectations? Mark, let's start with you, followed by Heidi and Sam.
Sure. I think a lot of our generative AI work is coming from, it's bifurcated. It's either coming from startups that, just raised fresh funding, and that is also segmented into folks that are trying to iterate on the transformer paradigm, or alternatively, folks that are trying to build a net new paradigm through original research and trying to figure out ways that are more scalable, more cost effective, and more accurate. And then on the other end of the barbell, if you will, is larger companies that are sitting on lots of data, and they're thinking about how can we bring in someone that can think about how can we introduce and inject generative AI into our product portfolio. I would say right now, one of the major dynamics that I am seeing firsthand is that there are only a very few subset of folks that truly have these technical skills, and they are being courted by everyone on the planet, from the OpenAIs, the Anthropics of the world, to all of these startups, to all of these larger companies. That candidate pool is also one of the most squirrely candidate pools I've ever come across in my experience. And they, for good reason, right? They are getting inundated with hundreds of outreach. They are incredibly risk averse, and they are also oftentimes sitting at DeepMind or sitting at these larger companies where they are being paid handsomely. And so in order to attract those candidates, employers have had to change how they have had to evolve how they message their value prop. But I would say for this group in particular, it's really important for everyone to be reading the latest research, to be spending your nights and weekends playing around with the various technologies, leveraging the open APIs that people have started building out, and also forming a thesis on how you think you can inject these technologies into the products of the companies that you're interviewing for. And I would challenge you all to think beyond the basics of let's add a co-pilot or let's add some element of a ChatGPT into your product. Really think from first principles around what are some of the truly innovative next gen things that we can bring to market leveraging these technologies. And I would also say a little bit of wait and see, right? I think I'm an AI optimist, but I'm also cognizant of how early we are in this cycle. And Sequoia, of course, just came out with a really interesting article talking about, hey, is this $600 billion that we've all injected into generative AI? Is this, us being a hammer and treating everything like a nail? Or, are these truly going to bring and generate ROI for these startups? A lot of it is to be seen, right? So I think there could be some value in not just jumping on this hype cycle as quickly as possible, but exercising some patience, exercising some judgment, and waiting for the world to evolve a little bit before you pick your bets and you pick your winners.
Given the time, thank you, Mark. 30 seconds from both Heidi and Sam, and then we jump into questions.
I like what a candidate told me just on Friday morning. He said, this is the time to be both a practitioner and a learner of AI, and applying that to, everyday life, and thinking about, how that is going to be applied to the search that you are now, looking for in your next opportunity. When I think about the market, every time there's been a correction in the markets it's come back bigger than the last time. And there's always been a big, technology disruption at the center of it. So we have to believe that the market's going to come back, things are going to get better, and AI will then be at the center of that. So now is the time.
So, Sam?
Yeah, in 30 seconds, I'd just say, don't panic about it if you're not in it right now. If the science is the product, if the model is the product, then you're probably a data scientist turned product leader. For everybody else, you're applying the technology in existing business models that you understand, and you just go and find a role running product where you understand the business models. And if you look at some of the key hires that have happened recently, Anthropic, who are a model business, just hired someone from Instagram because they're going for a consumer play. And the same thing's happening across SaaS marketplaces, other business models. So it's not a retooling of everybody. It's just seeing where these technologies apply themselves in areas that you understand.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of your insights. Let's shift to audience Q&A. Mahip and Juhi, could you help moderate the questions, please?
Absolutely. And I think the top question got a lot of votes. How can candidates work with recruiters? What would you suggest they do to make that a great experience for both the recruiters and the candidate or the prospect?
Happy to go first. Oh, Heidi, go on.
Make it easy. Make it easy for us to understand who you are, what you've done, and how to get in contact with you. It's not about DMing in an in-mail on LinkedIn. It is about business email. Business people do communicate through business email. Move to business email as quickly as possible and serve up everything. Don't make us ask, can I see a resume? Can I see a LinkedIn? Serve it up. You're in a job search, make it easy.
Yeah, I totally agree. Coming back to my point about being specific about what you represent in the market and the type of roles you're looking for. You know, every conversation that we have that's an introductory conversation starts with, what is it that you want to focus on? What is your risk profile? Can you go early stage? Do you have track record in doing so? What do you need to earn in year based upon your own personal circumstances to help us understand the risk you can take? And if the answer is I can do all sorts of different things depending on the context, it doesn't give us anything to focus on. So be specific about what it is that you're looking to do. Make sure that you articulate the type of opportunity you're looking for and why you would be a great candidate for it, and serve that all up together. It's difficult for us to go and have conversations with everyone individually. Unfortunately, our business model means we're client driven. So we have to focus on the client and then the people that we think suit those opportunities. What we always do when people contact us is let the rest of the firm know that you are looking. And if you've served up information that we can then share easily, you're more likely to have visibility across the whole firm quickly.
Mark, anything to add to that?
No, I think being clear around what are the right types of roles that you want to target. To Sam's point, being crystal clear around your compensation expectations and the trade-offs. And yeah, I think just making it as easy for us to understand your background and what you're looking for as possible.
I'm about to offer something here, which I'll need the volunteers' help on. But I think one of the subtext in this question was also, how do these folks here even reach firms like yourself? Because you're obviously busy. A lot of people are actually reaching out to you. And I don't imagine we're going to put up your email addresses for everybody to kind of email you. So would you be open to, if from a volunteer standpoint, we curate a set of like resumes that people send to us and maybe just send it to you?
Yes.
Would you be open to that?
Yes. Always.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah.
Great.
And
Thank
Shubham,
you.
I'll add to that. That was a precursor to this question as well. That let's say I'm a product executive. I've been happy in a role for a few years now, and I'm starting this search, and I'm starting to explore new opportunities. How do I go about engaging executive recruiters such as yourself? You know, you are three very good recruiters. Thank you for sharing your insights. But how do I actually start engaging recruiters? How do I start connecting with them and letting them know that I have a need, right? You talked about the messaging, and that was very, very valid. Be transparent, understand the needs, and understand the messaging. But how do I even go about creating a network or engaging with this network?
I'd say a couple of things quickly. Firstly, a bit like our business, executive search is much better bought than sold. People come to us because of the reputation we have for the things that we've delivered. And if you push yourself upon the community to say, what searches do you have? It it's the same as you reaching out to everyone and saying, what opportunities do you have? Allow yourself to be found. And the way that you do that is being really clear around the content that you curate for yourself in the public profile platforms like LinkedIn that you have. Also ask friends that have recently gone through searches, the recruiters that they used. If they've been placed recently, you're more likely to get a connection with that recruiter than somebody that you've got no connection to at all.
I'll cue
Awesome.
the next question in. So, VC funded firms versus public companies, like what are you looking for candidates when it comes to either one of these? How are they different or not?
And let's include PE also. To Sam's point, there is a surge in PE. So public companies, VC funded, PE funded, what are some key candidate differences?
Within PE, because that's where I'm spending a lot of my time right now, track record of working within other PE environments is critically important. Track record of transactions is critically important. And then I think in PE, domain matters a little bit less. Sometimes it matters, but really they want just generally like best athletes that can rinse and repeat. And then within venture, I think it's a lot of what Heidi mentioned of can you build that like chemistry and rapport with the CEO and with the founder or with the hiring manager. And then it's a lot more track record of innovation and growth.
Yeah. You know, a lot of founders are looking for, have you taken it from, 5 to 10, from 10 to 20, from 20 to 50, right? Where have you done that? What was the situation that you were hired into, and guide me through that journey of how you got to 40 million, 50 million ARR. That's a lot of it, growth. And of course, domain expertise rules the roost right now.
Sam, anything to add?
I don't really have anything to add to. I think you've covered it. It's horses for courses. People, we're fairly simplistic. We all like to organize things into hats we understand. If you've done the thing that we're looking for before, you're more likely to be contacted for that thing again.
All right, the last question maybe that we can do in the time is actually about you all, is what are your specializations? What do you focus on? How do we know that? And how do we discover specializations and recruiters in them? Like how do we go about doing that?
Well, it sounds like we're all doing the same thing, but in shades of different types of organizations, which drives the scale of the candidate, right? So, I focus on product leaders for B2B SaaS companies, primarily venture-backed, founder-led businesses, founder-led startups. And so my interest is always connecting with individuals who have gone through that journey with another founder.
So you're domain agnostic, Heidi, correct?
Correct. Health tech, ed tech, e-commerce, fintech, all the techs, all the things.
Mark, Sam?
I am more focused on private equity backed, or I would say I do some like pre-IPO venture work as well. But most of my work is around that 100 to 500 million revenue run. So I'm really looking for folks that have either gone from like 50 to 100 million plus, or have gone from 100 to 250 to 300 million, have gone from 250 to 500 million, 500 million to $1 billion in terms of revenue. And then all within B2B. But I do have colleagues that do consumer. And so, I'm happy to connect those that are more consumer or marketplace focused to those colleagues internally as well.
So I'm asset class agnostic to a degree. I have a particular interest in deep tech. So I'm working with sensor fusion businesses that are building platforms to eradicate nefarious drones. I'm working with health tech companies that are using computer vision as decision support tooling. I'm working with Gen AI model businesses to build infrastructure to be able to deploy models into business, and then all the tooling systems and infrastructure that come around that. And depending on where those technologies are in the innovation cycle, determines whether I'm working in venture or public or PE.
Awesome. We are at time, and I know there are a few more questions, so I appreciate all of your patience as we try to get to as many as possible. I first want to again thank the panelists, Heidi, Mark, Sam. Thank you so much for taking your time and being here today and sharing these insights. For all of us out there, I'm going to borrow a leaf out of what Brian said out of the last session. Brian, you're here. I see you here. To be kind to ourselves through this transition. We are bigger than our career search and transitions. So take a moment, have compassion for yourself, and please know that we're not alone. We are all here as a community to help support each other. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll send you more information in the follow-up emails on how can we actually maybe create like a resume book or something like that to reach Heidi, Mark, and Sam more effectively. Thank you all so much again, and good luck with the rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.